What's up, everyone? Welcome to Bilbrons and Dragons. I'm your host, Bilbron DaoLockStone. So today we're having another battle report for my Molebron DaoLockStone build, which I have been playing in a Westmarch server called the Forged Concordance, which I really have been enjoying a lot and highly recommend. So all of the information for it will be in the description below. Feel free to join me there and we can adventure together. So this is going to be something of a somber report, because unlike the first 5 videos in this series where I simply, collected victory accolades, this time it was a mission fail, and it was a bad one that resulted in half the party dying. And I actually thought that I was going to be the only survivor, but the other guy was a tabaxi and had a 120 foot dash speed. So it was a disaster, and it's really unfortunate because things had been going so well up until then. And so I want to just emphasize right away that this is a storytelling channel. I'm going to relate what happened, and it's a tactical channel, so I'll be doing some analysis. And so right away, I want to say mistakes were made on all sides. I in particular take the blame for it because I'm the guy that actually assembled the team, and I put together a 4-man team of 2 Warlocks and 2 monks. And in my defense, I read the capsule description, and it said moderate combat based on choices. And so I kind of thought it was going to be an easy puzzle type of mission, and I didn't realize that it was going to get this bad, and that was on me. Right? This is the Forged Concordance. Ain't no baby proofing, and they play for keeps. And, I assembled a bad team, and then, maybe I didn't lead them properly. So, in fact, I will say that I didn't, and it's unfortunate that, the other guys died. Because that has real consequences in the Forged Concordance. One of those guys had 21 badges, and he gets to restart a new character, but he drops down significantly based on where he was at to 8 badges. So 6 or 7 sessions worth of adventuring kind of wiped out right there. It's traumatic. Dying is traumatic, and that's why there's going to be no fingers pointed here. I am going to be making descriptions of what people did, and there's going to be no judgment. I'm trying to relate the objective facts as they occurred and giving my tactical thoughts. And one guy I will be calling out a bit because I know he quit the server, and he was particularly bad in just an attitude and a metagaming and just an all-around bad player way. It went far beyond just him making simple tactical mistakes as a PC. And I'll be calling out all of that stuff. And I guess I should first put up my character, because I've deviated from the Molebron DaoLockStone build, which originally went with Pact of the Tome. And I decided to go with Pact of the Chain here because I personally just really wanted to get into the summoning playstyle, and I didn't want to screw around with spike growth and fancy Eldritch Blasts, which that build did do for a while before settling into the Ultimate Defense Caster plus Summoner playstyle that we ultimately would have manifested, and which I've already manifested. Right, with Pact of the Chain at level 3, I've already got a really cool summoning playstyle, which I'm super happy with. But that, resulted in a few changes. That's why I have Investment of the Chain Master now. And I'll be progressing, obviously, a little bit different going forward. And when I level, I'll talk about that in more detail. But this is the first time I've actually put my 3rd level character, row up for the viewers. And so there it is. And so, all right, on to the play-by-play. So I got the mission. I assembled the team of 4. Vera, who was a human monk druid, Imhotep, who was a tabaxi monk, and Dark Force, who was a tabaxi hexblade sorlock. And Dark Force was the one who was who left and who I'll talk about. And he was higher level. We were all 3rd level, and he was 5th level, so he was punching down. And so I got the job, and it was for Mr. Hopper, or that's what I called him, but his name's actually Sir Croker, who was the client for my Soup Night at the Creek gig. And that was a super fun gig. So I was looking forward to another cool task for Sir Croker. And it seemed in the note, he said his team or some of his people had found a long-lost pirate ship, and that he wanted us to recover a treasure from it. And so I was a little sketchy about the whole pirate ship thing because, me and sea creatures don't necessarily get along, but, it was the only job available. And I had promised Imhotep that it would be sea creatures because he had really had some harrowing experiences with undead, and it was like, I don't want to fight any undead. I'm like, oh, dude, it'll be chill. It's like, a long-lost sea ship, or, it's going to be a sea thing. And, I was wrong. So we headed out to Sir Croker's estate, which I had been to before, a giant mansion, and we talked to him, and he gave us some more of the skinny. The ship was called the Golden Arrow, and it was a legendary ship that had been lost, over 100 years ago, and it was unusual in that it was also a casino ship. Oh, and I guess I should say the name of the adventure is the casino ship that once sailed, and it was run by DM Wow the Sketch or Merwim. Not really sure which one he goes by, or both. But high marks, very high marks. I really respect how he let the game play out, and the natural consequences of the choices that we made ensued, and he didn't baby-proof anything for us, and that's awesome. I really like it, and I just like his general style of descriptions, and it was like a really cool story and all of that. So back to the storyline, we decided to head over to the Vault of Titania. We grabbed Eleanor as one of his employees that was going to guide us. She was kind of dour. I tried to warm her up over the week-long travel. I think I succeeded. I'm pretty charismatic, and I can crack a joke or two. At least my character can. I personally am rather robotic and low EQ, so not high charisma by any means. So in any case, we made it to the Vault of Titania. We made it to the ship, and it was super unusual because there's like some skeletons hanging out. Oh yeah, we'd asked Sir Croker if there was going to be any resistance, and he said, oh yeah, there was some cursed gold. One of my employees got like the mind whammy by grabbing some gold, and there was some undead there, but weird undead. And so we were like, oh, okay. And Imhotep really led into me about that because he really didn't want to fight any undead, and I had assured him that there wasn't any, and obviously I felt pretty silly, but how the hell was I supposed to know, I was expecting sea creatures, and I was actually like, oh, undead, cool. Not sea creatures? I'm down, let's do this. Even though undead are actually kind of difficult for me, as it turns out. So anyway, we'd arrive at the ship, and there was like some skeleton guards out front, but they weren't really harassing us or anything. They were armored and stuff. And so we went in, and I'm putting pictures up of all of this, and it was really grandiose, cool casino pirate ship kind of thing. And there was a bunch of inanimate skeletons littered about the tables and such, but we investigated and we played like a game or two with like acquiring tokens and cursed gold and stuff. But eventually the skeletons were animated visibly by like these spirits that flew into them. And then they animated, and then they were like skeletons, but like not really skeletons, because they were like talking and laughing, and you could have conversations with them, and they were like all pretty cogent of what their orders were, because they had a Captain Catherine Sly, a human, and so I kind of figured that we would encounter her at some point. And anyway, there was a mini game, and there was like 10 skeletons, and there was like a bunch of tables, and we needed to acquire 20 tokens to get into the next room, and we started with like 5, and so we played the mini game, and we actually managed to win the 20 tokens. But we did argue a little bit, because I was more of a mind that maybe we should clear this room and murder hobo it. And that didn't really go down that well, because the other guys kind of felt, well, if it's a game, we should play it. And of course, I totally get that. And that's ultimately what we did. But let's backtrack a little bit, because we were not tactically sound. One of the things I'm finding about this server, man, if you guys are watching this, play on this server. I would highly advise like talking to people at the beginning about like what you can do and how you like to fight. Because when you don't do that, you just kind of stumble all over each other, and it's not in the slightest bit coordinated, and it's just not good. And that's kind of what happened here. I actually even brought it up, and nobody even really wanted to talk about it. And I talked about what I do. Nobody else really wanted to talk about what they do. And then when we decided to go in, I was always just a little sketchy because I don't feel comfortable leaving potential hostiles behind when we could have easily eliminated them. Because when you are aggressive and you dictate the terms of engagement, you can, I mean, that's half the battle right there, guys. I mean, you set up a defensive position and you put like your, marshals up front and they dodge, and then everybody else, gets behind minor illusions and play, right? It's like you can do it in a methodical way that minimizes the danger on our end. And that is actually something that matters when there are consequences, like there are on the Forged Concordance. So anyway, I'm digressing. This is like a very different kind of battle report, right? Because of just what happened. So we won the game and we moved on to like the next level. And this was a room with a giant skeleton dude and then like a few smaller skeleton dudes, 4 of them, and they were drinking. And apparently there was like a drinking mini game here, and it completely was lost on me. I guess maybe it never registered to me that getting into a drinking game with skeletons, where it just like literally would fall out of them, was ever a good idea. So like, I mean, it didn't even cross my mind that might be on the table. And this is where, honestly, this is probably where I, screwed up more, where I definitely would like to kind of do that over. So what happened was we made it through, and we to that level, and we went into dialogue with them a little bit, but there was a lot of push from like a couple members of the party to kind of just pass everything and go on to like the next thing, and then particularly Dark Force. And I found out later that this was all metagaming because he had done this adventure before, and so he was just like literally wandering off from us and like opening doors and stuff in areas where we couldn't even see, and it was super annoying. But like in this room, he was like pushing us kind of towards the back of the room where there was a locked door of where we were supposed to go. I guess the vaults were there, and these skeletons didn't want us to go there. And we were talking and dialoguing it, but it didn't seem like it was working. And my character, Bilbron, had kind of decided at some point that, they were going to stop talking and attack us because everybody was so determined to get into that back room, and they were so determined to not. And they were kind of just getting closer and closer. And so I just retreated into a corner, and I was planning to just set up a defensive position. And I cast the illusion with minor illusion of a rock with myself inside of it, and that was stupid. It should have been a barrel, but even so, it really sparked these guys as if it was aggro, which, I guess they perceived it that way, and so that was my bad for assuming that they wouldn't. And so they kept getting closer, and my familiar was invisible, but saying, "Hey, step back, guys, you're getting too close, and they literally were like one step away. So I cast a darkness because I'm not going to let them start attacking me, and then we rolled initiative. And so maybe it was my actions that forced that battle, and if so, I regret that. I kind of felt like we could clear this room easily. I was getting a little annoyed with this constant desire to just bypass these rooms without killing things, and especially here where it was just an obviously super easy battle. Maybe the big guy would have been harder, but like it wouldn't have been a big deal. Because as it turns out, like we ran down this hall, like we picked the lock, Imhotep picked the lock, and we ran down this like narrow stairwell, and they just followed us. The big guy couldn't get through, so that was cool. But like the other skeletons all followed us, and we just destroyed them. It was like super easy. And then we could have easily gone back up and wiped out the ranged guy or the big guy who couldn't get through the door. So we literally could have just blasted him down with ranged attacks. And we didn't. And I actually didn't even suggest it because and maybe I should have. And again, I feel like that was a mistake. I should have, because it crossed my mind. But I didn't think that anybody would listen, because like literally nobody was doing anything in any kind of coordinated manner. Dark Force was wandering around, but also Imhotep, the other Tabaxi, was using his speed to do the same thing. And I'm like literally wondering what the hell is going on here. Everybody's splitting up. They're triggering traps and stuff, and we're not clearing rooms. I had a very sketchy feeling, about all of this, but again, I didn't actually think it was going to be a very bad battle, because it seemed like it was kind of a gaming sort of mission. So we proceeded to the next level, and there was like a puzzle involving keys and orbs and a vault, and we solved it and we got into the vault, and that took us to a treasure room. And the Orb of Darkness was there. That was the item that Mr. Hopper or Sir Croaker asked us to retrieve, was this Orb of Darkness. So we saw it, and we decided to go get it, and my imp was making epic investigation rolls. So he noticed a pressure plate, and we figured, okay, it's like an Indiana Jones style trap, so we're going to have to do the old switcheroo move and, get the thing right. So we did investigation. We found an orb that was about the same size in this giant pile of treasure, which was cursed as heck, by the way. Remember, we weren't supposed to touch it. And Imhotep actually had like a quirk where he's like a tabaxi and is just obsessed with shiny things. And so he was just, role-playing this, total shock at, all of this gold and stuff, which I think is totally cool. But we managed to successfully extract the orb without triggering any kind of traps or engagements. And that is a good thing, because it turns out that had we not gotten that right, we would have triggered an engagement with the BBEG, who is quite fearsome. I'll talk about that later. We didn't actually encounter her, but Dark Force told us what happened in his adventure later, and they fought the BBG, and it was very troublesome. And I actually liked that moment, because my familiar only succeeded on his sleight of hand because I used an inspiration there. I had to declare it before, and so I used it. And he got a 7 on his regular roll, but a 20 on his regular, so boom. We managed to do that. So we're all feeling good, because we successfully managed to get past all of this stuff, the games at the beginning, and then we got past the skeletons in the middle without too much combat or tough combat. And then we did this vault thing. And then we go back. And meanwhile, the DM is totally cluing us in. He's like, oh, there's footprint. You hear, footsteps and all of that and coming out. And we talked about it inside this little vault area, that we knew that we were going to be facing enemies the instant that we opened that door. And first I tried to get us out of there with an inspired move where I was like, look, we're right at the front. Why don't we just chop our way through the wood? And we're like, boom, we're out. And we don't even have to go through these guys. And the DM said, oh, if we tried to do that, that would completely collapse the whole ship. And I was actually like, that sounds good to me. But then I was like, but then we'd be fighting all these skeletons anyway, and there wouldn't be much cover. And anyway, that could be an unknown. But then the alternative seemed really bad too. And so I didn't push hard enough maybe for that. Maybe I should have pushed harder to just, make our dex rolls or whatever involved with collapsing the ship. Because we could have gotten out. We were literally at the front, and just some axes and some fire bolts would have gotten us out. But we didn't. We chose to open that door. And I told people to get ready, man. And I got ready. I created an minor illusion of a barrel, and I was in it. Because my first one was a rock, and then someone was like, hey, dumbass, why don't you make a barrel? That would fit in a lot better. And I was like, oh, good idea. So I made a barrel, and I was hidden in it. And Fargar, my imp familiar, was invisible. And the other guys didn't really do much. One guy even had protection from evil, and I kept waiting for him to cast it, and he didn't. And I just, I'm not really in a position to give people orders, and people don't like it when you tell them how to run their characters, so I didn't say anything. Maybe I should have said something. It occurred to me. But yeah, so we opened that door, and there was 10 of them, and they were ready to action. So they basically got a surprise round and blew us up, and then we rolled initiative, and went to initiative. And so you can see it's not pretty. And by the time I literally had my first turn, I was surrounded by enemies. There was literally an enemy in every adjacent square to me. And Imhotep was down to 5 hit points, and Vera was dead. And Dark Force had actually sprung out and killed one with a pretty awesome combat move, but then ran back into that room and was at the north side where you see. And then just the room was completely freaking filled with enemies. That was my first turn. And at that point, I literally saw nothing that I could do to flip that battle to a win. Because, like, what am I going to do? Miraculously kill one with my imp attack, and then there's just, 8 more in that room. All now can see me because I ruined my illusion, and they see my imp because they can see, he ruined his invisibility. So that was just sheer death. And so I felt compelled to retreat. And so because I'm a genie, I used Bottled Respite, and I retreated into my ring from within my minor illusion, and then Fargar invisibly picked up that ring and skedaddled and just dashed out of that room at his 40-foot move speed and got the hell out of there. And Dark Force managed to do the same thing with a Misty Step and some acrobatics, and then the Tabaxi famed 120-foot dash, which was actually pretty amazing. I thought that was pretty impressive. I didn't think there's any way any of those other guys were going to make it out. And then then Imhotep went down because he only had like 5 hit points left. And then that was it. We had given the orb to Imhotep, and so we lost the orb. Mission fail. And neither of us felt comfortable going back in there facing off with 9 enemies, which I could have. That was the thing. I thought about it. I did think of a plan briefly, but just ultimately the risk was too high, and my character is evil and, not necessarily willing to put himself at risk for people like that, that he just met. And so, yeah, that was it. Those 2 perma-died. Dark Force survived, but has since left the server. And I am the only survivor who I actually had another session that I'm not going to make a battle report for later because I was literally called in to replace somebody in the middle of it. And then it was like this really gory horror thing that it's not really appropriate for the channel. But I do want to mention it because there might be some repercussions, because at one point I freed a drow prisoner and I was like, remember my name and remember my face, bro. You owe me a solid. If you see me again one day, remember that. And then the DM afterwards was like, hey, that thing you said to that dude, that actually might come into play because there's going to be a follow-up adventure, and, it involves the drow. And so that was a cool moment, and, so remember that. And so then that's why I'm mentioning it to you guys, because if it comes up again in a later battle report, I'll have brought it up here. All right, so, yeah. What did we do wrong? What could we have done better? Well, one, we could have cleared the rooms. I could have done a better job trying to not go aggro in the middle room, right? There's the argument to be made that once we decided to go the games route and the non-aggro route, that we stick to that. And I did accidentally, but, recklessly, it was my responsibility. I did it. I cast that minor illusion, which they interpreted as aggro, and that definitely put some pressure on us. And then I cast the darkness, which definitely they considered aggro. So I basically started that fight. But that said, I felt like we could have easily killed them, and we should have killed them, and we should have killed the big guy, because what happened was the big guy went to the top and got up all those 10 guys that we had left alive and rounded them up and then had brought them down, sent them down. So there was that. I could have pushed harder for, the destroy the ship, chop our way out, roll our deck save kind of approach. I could have maybe helped set the other guys up better. Just really taking seriously the idea of skeleton pirates with short bows and advanced warding. I could have thought of some better stuff with let's go get some stuff, set up some cover in the front, then I'll back it up with an illusion. And then, when we open it, I'm going to make sure you've got protection from evil, right? I saw you cast that before. And it's like, anybody else have anything that might be good against, like an onslaught of arrows that we can pretty much assure is coming our way? Because I did see all of this coming. But just, you walk that balance of not wanting to be too pushy, but then people die. There's real consequences. So a lot to think about. And so anyway, I'll wrap this up. Again, a kind of a weird battle report just because it was a mission fail. I hope I don't have to do another one of these. I feel really guilty because I put this team together. I led them into a scenario where 2 people died, and there was a lot of things that I could have done better. And so, look, learn from my mistakes. I most certainly did. The second adventure that I just barely talked about went super good for me because I was super paranoid and super strict and super disciplined. And, when I roll out that playstyle the next time, you'll hear about it officially. So thank you so much for watching. This has been Bilbrons and Dragons. I'm your host, Bilbron DaoLockStone. See you next time.